Now that we've covered some of the styling tool basics, I want to bring you into an experience of styling raw ingredients. The styling raw ingredients is a really amazing chance to learn because it's not like you have to go and cook something. You don't have a huge amount of prior planning, let's say, to do. Instead, it's really about choosing really great ingredients, fresh ingredients, special ingredients if you can find them, and having fun with it. So let's get into it. As it so happens, I am growing currants this season, and I have some really beautiful fresh currants that I just picked in the garden. They're going to be part of my still life. There are gooseberries from a plant that is successfully fruiting this season too, so we're really lucky today I can do both of these things. And to make it even more special, just a few days ago on a bike ride, I found some wild black cherries. And they are so good. They're like the epitome of cherry flavor that we all know and love, but this is like on steroids cherries. So it's gonna be a lot of fun using these. I'm gonna come over here because the light at the window is telling me how everything's gonna relate on set, and the directionality is really important. So if I was in front of it, it wouldn't really help me. So I'm gonna just start by getting some of these vessels filled. And today I decided I'm gonna do a sort of neutral tonal story. So you'll see that most of the props, the plates and the dishes, are a similar kind of monochromatic feeling. And that helps the diversity of the ingredients really become center stage present. Another thing about these props is that I always love to include an element that's handmade and an element that is vintage. So today I'm going to tell a story of making a tart because I have all of these beautiful, of the moment, fresh ingredients, and I thought the best way to showcase them would be to make a tart. And we're not going to see the tart, but we're going to see the process of what it looks like to endeavor making the tart and try to tell the story that way. So, got my flour, sugar, eggs. That tells a bit of a baking story. And then these guys, we've got the pie server, dessert forks, and the vessel that it'll ultimately be baked in. So I always use my phone to set my shot up and to see what kind of framing I want to use. I chose this dish because I love the reflectivity as a metal object. It's really giving me a nice sort of dimensionality, and my thought had been that I'm going to do the cherries there, and I'm going to continue setting the shot up, but let's get in on what this looks like. Because these berries are so fresh, I'm including some of the leaves from the plant, and that's a really special detail that if you bought it at a store would really be unlikely to be present. And I think that that furthers the story I want to tell, that is, these are so fresh. I went out and picked them. Literally, I went out and picked them. And this gives you some of that flavor. The currants are my favorite because they really just glow. There's a little bit of casual mess here, which is, I think, so important not to be too precious with your ingredients or anything that you're working on. You want it to really feel natural and not too placed. All of those things, paying attention to that kind of detail really keeps it real. And that's the story I like telling. One of the big reasons I really like using the phone is so much these days I'm working directly to post to Instagram. And this is really giving me an indication of, okay, what's my framing look like? And now I'll use the phone to do a little more fine tuning, then put it down, work through some of the final adjustments, and then check out how it's evolved with the phone again. Now that I have that general idea set up, I'm gonna get into these cherries. So I've made a little bit of a mess now, and it's looking kind of gorgeous. It makes me feel like I want to get closer into that mess because that's where the magic is for me. I like that there's a couple cherries that still have their stems. We actually were diligent about not bringing the stems home because that's like extra work. But the cherries with the stems are really pretty, and it helps you remember, especially if you don't know black cherries, that these are actually cherries. So we got that. I'm going to put these over here, unless, actually, let me just see if there's another with a stem. Yeah, we got one more. 3 is always a nice number. Good odd number. I really like it feeling harmonious, but not necessarily contrived. And odd numbers, 3, 5, and 7 especially, really do that. So we've got the cherries. I'm going to make a little bit of mess with a few of the currants. I love the tangle of the currants. So gesturally, that's making a kind of magic moment. The leaves are nice. They're sort of strewn about. The gooseberries are just sort of like an add-on, like another cool shape. We've got this repetition of shapes, a difference in contrasting colors. The eggs kind of add to those shapes, but obviously as scale is, they're totally their own thing. And then just peeking in a little peripherally is the baking elements of the sugar and the flour, because really the magic is in these really special ingredients. So I'm going to crack an egg, see what that looks like as I add to the activity going on in the scene here. Let's see what that looks like. Because these are eggs from my neighbor, they are really golden and bouncy yolks, which makes that feeling of freshness further extended. Oh yeah, that is so good. And really, if the food doesn't make you want to eat it, it really isn't doing its job to me, because it's food, right? We could work with any medium if we're just looking to make something pretty. But if we're working with food, let's get some sensuality, some visceral sort of connection to what we're doing in there, because you want to conjure drool. You want to like affect people. So I'm just like kind of arbitrarily playing with the shells right now because they're really light colored. If I'm facing them cracked open to the light, it kind of makes them blown out. And I want to keep that in mind as I'm working with them. I might even make the broken egg more prominent with just a little bit of that shell peeking in to let you know that it is part of the story. Now, do you see how as I rotate the dish, how it keeps wanting to settle into the center of the dish, because there's a slight slope going on. And if I propped it up with a little wedge, it would be where I want it to be, which is at the side of the dish rather than more central. So I'm going to get my little stones that I talked about earlier as a shim and change that, fix it. When I'm thinking about establishing an image, it's always, where is the eye traveling? And are there places that the eye rests but doesn't have, like this feels like an empty space here unused. And I actually think I might put the eggshells here, because then I can keep the framing tight and get in on all this delicious action, but also use this area. Originally I thought, okay, cool, I'm gonna have a wider frame because I wanted to tell the story, including these other elements. But as I've been in this moment, I'm saying, okay, the real magic is in getting close. And it's still telling a story. We've got the cracked eggs. We've got that beautiful yolk next to it. We've got the pits. We've got the cherries with them, some of that juiciness. And then here we have this like seasonal moment, super fresh ingredients, really thoughtfully placed, but not fussy. And giving a sort of a visual flow as you're looking at the scene. Now that you've seen this lesson and the ideas presented in it, I want you to really consider what appeals to you, what catalyzes excitement for you, whether it's your cultural heritage, whether there's ingredients at the farmer's market that got you excited, whether there's a dish you've been wanting to try, and think about the ingredients present within that. And then play with this notion of those broad brush strokes and then the refinement and where the play is, and see if you can create for yourself something that feels really authentic and delicious. So the next lesson we're going to do is going to use the idea of a cheese board.